You are good to go. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on such short notice. October 2nd meeting. Let's have an approval of the agenda. We'll get through this as quick as we can. Resolution is that the agenda for October 2nd, 2025 meeting of Affordable Housing Advisory Committee be approved. Somebody put that on the floor. That's Councillor Prost and Councillor Snell. All in favor? Any issues? Okay, so we'll move on. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I'm not seeing anybody. If anything comes up, please let me know at that time. For presentations and delegations, Patrick, do we have one, or is this just kind of a summary of what's happening?
So there is a presentation under 4.1 for GM from GM Fires Baguette and from Brittany Donner Gilroy as well.
Perfect. I will hand it over to those staff and let them take over.
Okay, thank you, Chair Bell. So through you, we will be presenting to you the long-awaited 10-year affordable housing and homelessness strategy. I'm going to just do a quick setup of why we're here and then hand it over to Brittany to walk you through the presentation. So really, back in May of 2024, right before we were about to click send and start the process of presenting this plan, we got a pause letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing telling us to withhold proceeding with passing a 10-year strategy until further notice. In August of this year, we were given a second letter that said, okay, you can now proceed to go ahead with your plans to pass your 10-year affordable housing and homelessness strategy. That letter included 14 key points that had to be included in the 10-year plan. However, since we work closely as a system service manager with the province, we were able to anticipate all 14. So our plan majority of the plan went unchanged, other than us modernizing a few things we've done since then in this last year to include in the plan. And really the plan, just for a little bit of context, in 2014 was the first time the province and the ministry had asked service managers to create a combined affordable housing and homelessness prevention strategy. And really in 2014, the majority of the focus of that first strategy, which was done through a third-party consultant, was really focusing on housing-based outcomes and really trying to quantify a goal of creating net new and they used the terms units, and those units included actual apartments and units that were created, as well as the creation of other types of housing through rent supplement programs. And if you recall, that was 2,685 units was our target. And of course, within those 10 years, we well exceeded that target. It's somewhere around the range of 3,300, what was accomplished in that 10-year period. So thereafter, we decided a few things. One, we wanted this year's plan to really focus on both service areas and how it contributes to creating more affordable housing and prevent homelessness. And while the first plan talked about our prevention work, it didn't actually actively quantify how much prevention work we did and how many people we helped. So moving forward, we wanted an in-house strategy that really understood our work. So we created this plan ourselves. And with it, we created a new way to think about how to create affordability and how to measure that affordability creation and with what activities. Here, you're going to see things like eviction prevention initiatives that we've been doing, urgent home repair work that we've been doing to keep units online and keep people housed that will now be quantified as a part of our next 10-year goal. Finally, I just want to share that this will reflect the great work that's already happening in our communities through our funded service providers. So there's a lot of incredible work, especially on the homelessness side, that has happened over the last 10 years and prior to even 10 years that is now going to be captured and reflected. Our goal here is to create an achievable 10-year plan based on the capacity of the things we've done on a daily basis, but increasing that with the opportunity to advocate to the other two orders of government to meet us or match us in the work we do. So you'll see all of that, and Brittany will walk you through the presentation, and I'll probably jump back in and explain the targets once we get to that slide. So I'm going to hand it over to Brittany now.
Thank you, Mina, and through you, Chair. So this is Building Up Simcoe County, our community blueprint for affordable housing and homelessness prevention, and it will span the timeframe of 2025 to 2035. This strategy will set the direction for the next 10 years of housing and homelessness work across Simcoe County. So drafting a plan, why these strategies matter. They are going to address current challenges tied to housing affordability, supply and demand challenges, and create interventions to mitigate homelessness. We know that housing affordability challenges have intensified. We can expect a growing population, which is going to increase demand. And we do know that there are challenges in the housing supply with rising costs and limited land and different resources. What a strategy does, though, is it also creates a unified goal to help pull public, private, and not-for-profit partners together, as well as the community and residents around a single target and certain approaches. And as Mina already laid out, it is also a legislated requirement. So we do, as a service manager, have to have a 10-year housing and homelessness plan under the Housing Services Act. So we did do this one in-house, and I'm actually glad we did, because we do have an obligation under the Housing Services Act to serve the entire housing continuum through this 10-year plan. And when we started looking at the housing continuum, we realized some of this was actually falling outside of the scope of the Social and Community Services Division. And at the time, our departments weren't actually amalgamated housing and homelessness together. They were community services and social housing. And so they too were kind of doing different work on the spectrum of the housing continuum. And when I got looking at the work that was already being done, the funding streams that were coming in, the people that were being served, the partners we were working with, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. So I started investigating all these separate strategies and realized we were already embarking on a 10-year strategy. So what this new plan does is it actually pulls together our 10-point homelessness prevention plan, which is in this same time frame of delivery. It pulls together our Simcoe County Housing Master Plan and our Housing Attainable Supply Action Plan. And it looks at these plans and it says, okay, well, the 10-point plan is serving obviously those in very low income, and it's dealing with the encampments, the emergency shelters, the transitional housing, and housing with supports. We know that the master plan for Simcoe County Housing Corp is relatively all the community housing, the housing that we anticipate developing in the next 10 years. And the Attainable Housing Supply Action Plan is also working in tandem kind of with economic development strategies to incentivize affordable and attainable housing development within the market. So what this strategy is meant to do is then to encompass all of those under one umbrella and build in other pieces like our community safety and well-being strategy, our age-friendly strategy, poverty reduction, and all of those different pieces to kind of fill in any of those gaps and make sure that everyone on the housing continuum is being served. So this whole county approach, this is a lot of work that is actually already in strategies that are to span the next year, and that they're already like funded, underway, being operated under this one single strategy. So they're meant to kind of lean on each other, not overdo each other. So the larger strategy, because this is really just a very concise overview, there was a lot of research that went into this, and it is very data-driven and informed. And over the past 10 years, the county has actually been collecting and reporting on a lot more data points and using it in its decision-making. So this is just a little bit of context, but the actual strategy document that will come forward to council does contain a lot of research through the census and through a CMHC-developed tool called HART, which is a housing assessment resource tool, and it really focuses on core housing need for all of the different service managers' communities. So what we do know, just kind of high level, is population projection. We are expected to grow quite significantly. You can see between 2001 and 2034, which is towards the end of this strategy, the population will have almost doubled. So that will drive further demand for housing services and infrastructure. But what population are we serving? So we know it's going to grow, but like who in our community is going to be in places of need? You can see that the demographic of 80 and up, by the time this strategy finishes, will have increased by 67%, and the demographic of 65 to 79 by nearly 30%. So we do have a significantly aging population. It's not only people that live here now, but people do choose this as sort of a retirement community. So there will be higher demand for accessible, affordable, and supportive housing. More people on fixed incomes that will need stable rents or support for aging in place. Now, not everybody in that age bracket is in lower income, but some of them will want smaller, affordable ownership opportunities so they can downsize or right size out of their current housing. And we'll probably need a lot of increased healthcare and housing with services. Some of the feedback we got in the community research was people would love to see communities for older people that actually include things like shoveled walkways. So things like that, where there's services that actually support the housing. In terms of housing affordability, and I just want to preface, when you see 2022, that looks a little old. We do have a housing data aggregator that can tell you like rents as of last month, but we wanted to compare apples to apples to apples. So the core housing need data is attached to the census data. So we are using data within the same time frame just so that you're getting a realistic picture. But you can see 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms are outside of the affordability scope for most rental households based on this data. So median income was between 54 and 56,000 for renter households. So based on that 30% rule that we tend to use, that would place an affordable rent between $1,350 and $1,500 a month. So you can see why in the core housing need tool, 26.6% of renter households identified as being in core housing needs. So those rents were just outside of that reach of affordability for them. A little bit more on what core housing need means. Core housing need can actually be one of 3 or a combination of any 3 of these things. It's either unaffordable, so it's more than 30% of your before tax income. It can be inadequate, which means it's in need of major repairs, but you can't afford to make them. Or it's unsuitable, so it's too small for your household size and composition. 19,490 households identified as being in some form of core housing need, and 23.6% was that renter calculation. So when I tell you that they can't afford rent, it's about 1 in 4 renter households that is struggling to find an affordable rental. And about 5.8% of owner households are having difficulty with core housing needs. So affordability, or it could be also inadequate, like in need of major repairs, which is why some of those programs we have to keep people housed, like urgent home repairs, that's where they fit in on that spectrum. Affordable housing deficit. So it did actually give us a number. This tool quantified the number of affordable rental units essentially that would be needed. And it's around 10,468. Now that's not all new development. That's just the amount of spaces that would be needed to kind of completely fix that problem. And that would be for all of those incomes that are below 46,500 per year. So again, it's a strategy. It's basically a balanced approach is what we take. It's a mix of creating new affordable units or also just subsidizing units to make them affordable that exist in the market. Some homelessness data. We actually do have a quality by name list now. And as of September 2025, because it's constantly updating, we had about 14,000 households that were identifying as homeless. Not all of that, I believe, is street level homeless. It could just be couch surfing as well, but they're identifying as being unhoused. And then 2024, we actually did conduct another enumeration. This is a point in time count. So obviously these numbers fluctuate, but on that night that they conducted it, they did encounter a total of 1,080 individuals that were identifying as homeless. And what was quite concerning between the 2022 enumeration and the most recent one was that in those 2 short years, they did see a jump of unsheltered homelessness from 4% to 30%. So that is why the diversion and the prevention pieces really do need to be quantified and monitored and calculated, and it needs to become a much larger focus in the strategy. And that's a move that we have taken moving forward. So we have based this in data, but we've also based it on a lot of policies. A lot have come down in the last couple of years. And we just want to demonstrate that we are very highly aligned. And as Mina said, this work had already been done. So when these new recommendations had come down from the province, we really weren't surprised. And much of it actually was built into the strategy. So it was actually affirming for staff that we were definitely on the right track. You can see we're in alignment with municipal policies in that we've baked them right into the strategy. We've also reviewed a lot of the provincial and federal policies, so things like all the housing supply action plans, community housing renewal strategy, the NHS, all of those pieces. And why this is important isn't just to ensure policy coherence, but by aligning, we unlock funding and resources. And we've actually had some pretty good experience with this in some of the grants that we've written within the last little while, just in terms of if we can demonstrate that we're a good investment, if we can demonstrate that we're ticking the boxes they want to see ticked, we're collecting the data they need in order to look into specific pieces that they want to quantify, then we make better partners for them to invest in. So now that I've kind of told you a little bit about our methodology and the direction that we're taking, I'm just going to walk you through what this strategy actually is. So sorry, just water. We actually, and this was the community housing renewal strategy that sort of inspired this approach, which was a provincial strategy. But basically, we're just going to focus like right in on what it is that we need to solve these challenges. So supply, first and foremost, is a big one. Building, buying, preserving, and increasing access to housing. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is people. So they're just houses. They're not really homes until you fill them with people. And we want to support residents in obtaining and retaining housing while planning for them with dignity, inclusion, and connection in mind. And then service system management. This piece is really kind of a performance management for our part as service manager. So this is about how we coordinate, fund, and strengthen the housing and homelessness system through data-driven decision-making and innovative partnerships. So this is how do we build those partnerships? How do we unlock some of those resources? How do we find new and innovative revenue streams? Like, this is really a service management kind of piece for us to grade how we're doing in executing the strategy. So these are the objectives of the strategy. What will come forward if the strategy is approved would be an implementation plan and then also a reporting framework. This is very similar to how actually we did it even under the consultants, because they only provided the strategy. They did not provide the implementation plan and reporting framework. So staff brought that after. And it actually made sense to do it this way only because if they don't approve the approach, then we don't want to tell them all our to-dos. We'll just wait and get that green light first. So under supply, the goals, there's 5 in each category, are to increase the supply of new affordable rental. 2 is to prevent and mitigate the loss of existing affordable rental housing. 3 is to create affordable housing within existing supply, and that is done through the subsidies or infill. 4 is regulating the use of existing housing stock, and 5 is aligning housing supply with market and local needs. And when you see these, you can see again how these other strategies are kind of coming into play. So the increasing the supply of new affordable rental is very much that SCHC master plan. And when you get to the end there at number 5, aligning housing supply with market and local needs, that's very much the attainable supply action plan. So you can see how now we're really aligning under corporate objectives in all of these different departments. For people, so the province actually was really big on us looking at this core housing need tool that was developed by CMHC. And so one of our goals obviously would be to decrease the number of households experiencing core housing. We want to see that number go down. Mitigate eviction through into homelessness, through prevention, diversion, and rapid rehousing responses. So to Mina's point, this is work actually that we've been doing the past 10 years. There's been a lot of work going into it and programs delivering a lot of pieces. Our eviction prevention program, you can actually see in our annual reports, we tell you like how much money we allocated and how many people were served and in what ways they were served, whether it was first and last month's rent, whether it was rental arrears or utility arrears. And it is actually a really helpful program. I think it's about 1,500 households annually that typically take this program up, and that helps them from being evicted, or it helps them get, if they are being evicted, from one place to another very quickly. Also, in part of this people service is address the unique needs of individuals and households experiencing or at risk of homelessness through appropriate housing and supports. So finding the best ways to align people with the supports that they need. Creating inclusive communities that support the health, well-being, and safety of all community members. This was really keeping our community safety and well-being strategy in mind and trying to link together as much as we could internally to make sure that people are accessing all of the resources available to them. And number 10 is enhance client experiences within Simcoe County Housing Corporation. So that is a people-driven initiative, but that's also a little bit of a system management one, making sure that we are doing a good job. And under service system, we have another 5, which is continue to enhance community shelter services and standards, strengthen partnerships and system coordination with community and municipal partners to optimize housing and homelessness prevention initiatives, improve information sharing, and expand alternatives to encampments that support transitions to stable housing. So we are actually already, again, a lot of it's work underway, developing a tool that should support outreach workers and being able to report back to bylaw offices and hopefully minimizing some of the stress of it was a lot of emails going back and forth. So we're trying to create kind of like an online portal that will help automate a bit of that approach. So just any way that we can improve communication, sort of lean processes, try to make it easier for anybody that's providing these services. Improve the effectiveness and impact of affordable housing initiatives through systematic data collection, including disaggregated data, ongoing monitoring and evaluation processes to inform evidence-based decision-making and ensure successful program delivery. Now, if you're not a data person, and it's not really common phrase to you, disaggregated data really just breaks data down. So when we get like 4,000 people answering a survey, but who were those people? Because if it was predominantly one group over another, then you're not necessarily getting the voices of all of those different groups. So disaggregated data really helps us break down to understand all of the different kinds of people, like how many women, how many men, how many different cultures, how many different ages, what locations you're in, urban or rural. So who's actually answering some of the surveys or who we're actually tracking. So it makes for much better data and creates kind of a microcosm of the community. So we can actually get a truer story of who's sort of influencing those decisions. Ensure that SCHC affordable housing projects are created and implemented with a dual focus on environmental sustainability, fiscal responsibility, providing cost-effective, inclusive living solutions for residents. Again, we're trying to build in as many strategies and approaches as we can. This greening initiative is actually part of our PF&P department a little bit, and it just kind of brings some of that pieces together as well. And then lastly, generate innovative partnerships and revenue streams to support increased affordable housing creation. So we know this stuff's expensive. We know that the funding resources are kind of limited and time limited. So we want to try and create, new approaches and partnerships that can be a little bit more innovative. So funding overview, there's, everyone has their Everest, I say, and it always comes down to how are we going to pay for it? Well, basically, multi-level government funding is required. So it's not all the county, and it never really has been. It's always been a mix of both. We do take a balanced approach to capital and operating. So we're mixing different pieces together. We are creating units, purchasing them, converting them, repairing them, or we're operating programs like rent supplements or eviction prevention, homelessness prevention. And the focus on partnerships is to extend the impact by creating more public, nonprofit, and private sector partnerships. So it is going to be a big focus of ours moving forward to see if we can get new people to the table, come up with new solutions to really kind of maximize on what we do have in terms of resources. Planning for a 10-year target, putting a dollar amount to it, it can be a challenge. We did highlight this in the strategy, and we actually did provide in the larger document a really big background, a comprehensive sort of explanation, just even to the public, on where the money comes from generally and how it works. Because one of the challenges is that most of the funding arrives to us as service manager through annual allocations, which are fixed amounts, and they're usually like a 3 and 5 year kind of span, and shorter term competitive programs, which are time limited or application based. So sometimes we apply and we don't get it, or other times, we apply and it's like a really fast one-time chunk of money that needs to kind of be utilized quickly. So because of these timeframes and sort of cobbling them together, it can be difficult to say, hey, over the next 10 years, this is how we want to spend. So this uncertainty does make it a little bit difficult planning for one of these strategies, but we did kind of come up with a system for that. So what we focused on is we actually said, okay, hey, this is not the first time around anymore. We already have a 10-year strategy, and we looked at, over that course of 10 years, what did we deliver annually? And actually, we've reported on it the entire time. So we can actually look at how much funding and from what streams and through what programs went out the door, and how many households or people were served by that. And then we kind of extrapolated an average from there and said, okay, if we operated status quo, if we continued to count on the level of investment that we have for these programs right now, what does that look like over the next 10 years? And again, you'll kind of see the balanced approach across the top here. So the capital and operating is part of the original strategy. That's your units built, units subsidized, and then also the diversion and prevention. Now we're actually looking at it. So that was part of the last strategy too. We just didn't really show you. So now what this looks like is under capital, the Simcoe County Housing Master Plan, which is part of the strategy, actually has a housing pipeline. They've identified what they could build over the next 10 years if the funding were there, and it's 1,091 households, actually technically that's new units. Now they don't have all of the funding for that, only a portion of that strategy has been approved because of that short-term and limited funding. Secondary suites, we already have money we can allocate towards that. That would be about 240 units over the course of the strategy. So this is the whole 10 years you're looking at. Operating municipal rent supplement program, if we continue to operate as we currently do, it would be 820 households, give or take. The give or take is because there's different levels of rent supplement. So there's really deep subsidies, which are quite high amount, and then there's also shallow subsidies and moderate subsidies. So depending on who we're helping and to what degree, that number would alter slightly. And then if we had the provincial funding, and we could continue counting on that, which is COB, that's actually, provincial and federal, that's bilateral agreement. So that is federal provincial money, and that's through COB, and that would be an additional 2,840 households, give or take. And then also we have the homeownership down payment assistance. So again, that is a unit. We're getting you into a unit through a subsidy. That would be about 90 households served, give or take. And then through diversion and prevention, I've been talking too long. You can see that's quite a high number. So 1,500 households is about the average that we serve under these programs. So over the course of a new 10-year strategy, 15,625 total households would be served with eviction prevention interventions. And again, that could be rental arrears, or it could be first and last. It could be a number of things. Urgent home repairs, again, that can keep a lot of older people in their house. It also keeps that housing stock viable. That's 290 total households that could be served. And capital repairs program for nonprofit providers. This is huge. This is a lot of money that the county puts forward to renovate or fix the buildings of nonprofit providers. That was not really very well quantified under the previous strategy, but it protected a lot of units and kept them within the nonprofit housing system. So you can see here what this all breaks down to in larger numbers is it would be 1,331 households housed in new units created. 3,750 households housed through subsidies. So that's kind of your old target now when you push those together. And then under the diversion, it would be 15,915 households supported with homelessness prevention. And that number does include duplication because people can actually ask for that same service every 2 years, I believe it is. So they may be getting help more than once within that time frame. So what it boils down to is about 20,996 total households served. So that's through all means. And I did actually write the number down here. But it's about 5,080 households housed. So the old unit target, 2,685 new units, that's the new target is 5,080. But we're not calling it new units, we're calling it households housed, which is a little bit more representative of the fact that there's different ways of doing that. So you can just see here a little bit more visually the previous target broken out between capital and operating, and the new target, you can see the capital and operating, and then you can also see the amount that that diversion actually takes up. And this just breaks down again that multi-level government funding that I was talking about. So we did take into consideration, okay, we're kind of making an assumption here if everything remains status quo. What if it doesn't? What does that look like? So you can see here 1/3 is us. So municipally, what we're putting forward is, a third of those SCHC units plus the secondary suites that we fund and our municipal rent supplement program. And then also the retention and repairs that we've been doing, those 1,500 roughly households, that's funding that we've been doing the whole time. So if municipally funded, that's kind of where you end up. You get about, that total stays the same. So you get about 603 people housed through new units created, 910 housed through subsidies, and then we'd still serve that 15,915. If the province kind of hops in there, and you can see also the entire target, so provincial and federal, together that would create an additional 3,750. It doesn't change the household served through diversion because we're already doing that. It just simply increases those served through subsidy. And if the province also went in on the SCHC pipeline, that would create 967 units instead of 603. And then if the entire target, if the federal government put in 2, we'd reach that 1,331 units, which is the 1,091 and the secondary suites as well. So it's just all kind of broken down here in chunks. You can see that we have ours that we put in. If the province puts in, then we can continue to grow. And if the federal government puts in, then we can actually achieve that entire target. And that's kind of the dollar price tag attached to all of those.
So I think maybe here just to share a little bit with the committee. So this is a drastic shift in thinking. Rather than throw a number out there and assume we're going to get help, this is us showing what would happen on our own, what would happen with one order of government, or what would happen with both orders of government. And of course, that's what we're trying to achieve is the entire target. So what we're telling both orders of government through our 10-year strategy is we can actually accomplish 20,996 households served for $911.9 million. And really that the plan just walks them through how that can happen. But it's still hedged against a really good target, which is our 1/3 target, that we could still serve 17,482 households at the $324.5 million that we've already committed and we know we can achieve. So really that bottom blue box is our foundational work that we're going to do regardless. The gray box can be part of the work that we're currently doing if the province commits to continuing just the level they provide us, and the federal government, we can reach that 2/3 target. And then in terms of the entire 3 out of 3 target, basically the full entire target, that's if not only we get what we usually receive from our rent supplement programs that are provincially and federally funded, but also get capital dollars to develop net new units. And really that's the development. And you can kind of see the driver obviously is development to the price tag, because that's the most expensive part of the undertaking we do. Okay, back to you.
Thank you. So the importance of diversion and prevention. We've spoken a lot about how we're going to be moving forward with including it. And I really just wanted to kind of drive home the importance, not just when you see that it actually helps like one of the highest numbers of people, but also a recent study by the BC Rent Bank analyzed around 1,500 households, which is about how many people we serve, and supported by eviction prevention, which is the same type of program that we're running. And without support, tenants actually faced higher rents, so an average savings of $457 per month when staying housed. I never actually looked at it from this perspective, but when they leave a unit that was relatively affordable to them, they're going to typically find a more expensive one on the market, which means even in terms of rent supplement, we're having to bridge a larger gap. So it's best to keep them housed if we can, if that's still a viable place for them to live. If it's just a matter of arrears, paying that up actually saves significantly more money. Moving storage costs and lost possessions also affect them. And about 40% of unsupported tenants would have become homeless, creating higher public costs in shelters, which we know is a very expensive system. And rent banks saved the province an estimated $27.5 million between 2023 and 2024. And for every dollar invested, there was a $5 savings return. So eviction does save, like our eviction prevention, saves a lot of money while reducing the social and economic and psychological harms of homelessness. But I think the biggest piece is that like we've been doing this through the whole entire 10-year strategy before, but because there wasn't a focus on it, we couldn't really walk it through even the same way that we do with the data we've collected on other things. So I think by making this at the forefront, it will be really interesting to do our own studies like this and sort of see if we're serving people in the right way. Is it making differences in the community that we can actually see? Now, there's always risk assessment and impacting factors on any strategy. And again, like it's a 10 years plan with short-term money. And we're making some assumptions. So obviously economic conditions can sort of affect the outcome as with construction and permitting costs, government funding, demographic trends, if the population changes in a way that we weren't expecting. Housing market conditions. There's also operational risks in terms of some of the repair of those buildings, environmental challenges, NIMBYism, and even uptake. So a lot of the programs we offer, like secondary suites or urgent home repairs, they do respond to demand. So it's unless people come to us and request that, we're not necessarily going ahead and doing that. So that's another factor that could come into play. But other than that, it is actually grounded in the work that we're already doing and that we already have funds allocated and earmarked for. So now I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Brittany. All right, go around the table. I just got the screen opened. Who wants to start us off? Oh, there we go. Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Chair Bell. I have a few. First of all, thank you for just a really great dynamic report. As quickly as you zipped through that, Brittany, it was so fulsome in its information and very thoughtfully laid out for layman's to understand, because this is a very complex situation with many, many layers. So thank you for that. I have a few different ones, starting first under the service system, number 12, strengthening partnerships. And you mentioned, about municipal and whatnot. We're all aware, obviously, of the recent situation in Barrie, and we know that each of our municipalities are dealing with very similar challenges on various scales. Do you currently have a team or a task force at the county level that you're looking at encampments and not only prevention, like obviously you're handling that prevention piece, but then when they show up on our municipal doors, are you putting together some just some strategies that we can then take forward to implement in our communities? Is my first question, please.
So thank you, Councillor Snell, for the question. Through you, Chair, I'll take on that answer. So in the 10-point strategy itself, like we as a system service manager discussed the different preventative tools that we put in place to prevent homelessness, but also deliver the homelessness emergency shelter system. So a couple of things that we have are, one, anytime a community or a municipality or wants to enforce their bylaws when it comes to things like encampments, we often give like a 3-step process to walk them through what it's required in order to coordinate that effort, because enforcement is not a role of the system service manager. It is a role of a municipality, and it's the bylaws that they create that they'd like to enforce. What our role is through the legislative delegated authority is to ensure that there's enough adequate supports and services for those who are staying outside to be offered to come inside, and have the outreach components of that system in place. So what we do is we work with municipalities like this. The work in Barrie is not new. We help them enforce an encampment the summer prior. We helped Aurelia in the spring of 24 enforce an encampment. We've worked with both the towns of Bradford and Innisfil on singular encampments and New Tecumseh. So yeah, if there is an issue that occurs where there's an active encampment and the town wants to take action, we would work with their bylaw team. We have a dedicated team that is focused and does the meetings and organizes and coordinates the work, and then organizes and coordinates the funded service providers that are tasked with engaging those who are affected and making sure they have viable options to come inside. It is a system, so we rely on all of our system of services in order to leverage the adequate amount of resources required to address each encampment as it's particular. And it is a moving target when it comes to the legal ramifications of the actions, as different case law keeps popping up left and right, kind of trying to give guidance to the municipalities of when and how they can enforce. So we try to stay on that. In terms of coordinated tools, one tool that's coming in the next few weeks is actually, it's a bylaw enforcement portal, an internal tool for all municipalities to be able to track, upload, and map out where their encampments are, and allow us and our outreach teams to be able to make sure that those encampments are engaged, and then understanding whether they're abandoned, whether they've moved along, or they're still active. So that's something we've been working on since the winter, and some of the funding we got from the province on encampment enforcement we are putting towards being able to help all of our municipalities be able to map out, track, and then share back information that we can cross-reference with our outreach teams.
Thanks, Mina. Oh, follow up? Sure.
Thank you, Chair Bell. I think that's just phenomenal because, we all feel like that we're chasing our own tails to a certain degree, and we don't want to see individuals being moved from town to town. So very happy to hear about that portal. And if there's any opportunity, at a county conference or as a sidebar, to be able to bring together even on a one-day Zoom for an hour just to share what we are each individually experiencing and different techniques that we've tried and what's working and are not working. I think, sharing all of our knowledge is really powerful. So thank you very much, Mina, for that answer. And Chair, once you go around, I have a few more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Committee Member Webster. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to compliment staff on the draft strategy. It looks great. I think that there's also a role for the private sector to play in helping alleviate some of the affordability issues across the county. New market rent units will help reduce some of the rent pressure on older stock and help create naturally occurring affordable units. We're actually contemplating a project right now that would we begin with the first phase of 160 units of family-sized rentals and hopefully proceed forward with a second phase of another 160. But the project is currently not financially viable. And if Simcoe County Council proceeded forward with some of the recently discussed municipal tax incentives, that would be a game changer and help us get off the ground. And I just wanted to provide that to the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scrolling back. Oh, go ahead. Committee Member Maya. Is it Mayhe? Is that how you pronounce it?
May, like the month.
May. Okay, thank you so
much. Like that at all, but yeah, that's how it's pronounced. Thank you for this. I think this is just a phenomenal report too. I'm mindful of the really great language about innovative partnerships. I think successfully housing folks requires support from our system as well to ensure that the wraparound supports are available, whether that's mental health and addictions, home care, whatever that looks like. So, Mina, always welcome the opportunity to partner with you guys as we have done in the past. I think the only other line of sight that might might be helpful for everyone is that long-term care capacity, which is something we continue to address, and we acknowledge that is another alternative affordable housing. We acknowledge that we'll never be able to build our way out of the demand for long-term care, and so we really need to make sure that folks getting placed in that resource are those who need it most. But I have no doubt that there are a number of individuals that we are mutually supporting in crisis state that would benefit from the long-term care. So happy to share with you where those have been publicly announced, what beds we are anticipating coming into this county, and line of sight on timing on that one too. Thank you.
Through the
Thank
chair, if I may, yeah, thank you so much, Melissa, and I would just say that, of course, with partnerships, and again, we see those 2 and 3 levels of like orders of governments and how we work together. And we have still not finished the work on how to capture long-term care and our assisted living partners and our retirement home service providers that we're actively partnered with into those counts, because we are also striking new partnerships through some of the support we've received from the Ministry of Health. So there's still some work to be done on the targets to capture those and figure out how they count towards overall households served. And then our eviction prevention and seniors work similarly has a lot of work that we do to prevent at risk. We, as you know, we were quite successful with some work together last year. So again, how do we capture that in? Because those are very new areas of service that we took on as a service manager. To the comment prior in terms of private-public partnerships, I want to flag in that first slide where we show the continuum. There's the attainable housing area that has incentive-based ways to create affordability in the private sector, but also in our master plan and our pipeline of future developments in the county, there's ways to actually partner with nonprofits and private developers to create more affordability. And we talk about both those in our plan, and we cite the attainable housing, affordable housing strategy as well. And I know my colleague is also here, Nathan, who might have some more to speak to that later on today. But that's really just want to flag that both those things have been captured, and we are working on the long-term care piece as well, Melissa. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Mina. I'm just going to go down here. I think sometimes this 10-year plan, I know that basic capital projects, all these projects, it's 10 years, but I think the affordable social housing is changing so drastically, so quickly. It's almost like we have to do an update every 5 years or less because it's changing so much as we go.
Yeah, Chair Bell, we actually are required to do 5-year updates on the plan, but we do an annual report so that we keep ourselves accountable to how we're doing and if we have to pivot or shift or readjust the targets based on the need. And that it is constantly a moving target, quite honestly. I imagine I wasn't here for the last 10 years, but I was somewhere else. And I remember what we started thinking about versus what we ended up doing does change over the 10 years, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so you're treating it more like a working document, really. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to keep going around, scrolling around. Oh, go ahead, Brittany.
Sorry, if I may add to that through the chair, I just wanted to point out that because we broke out the cost per unit and the households served by year and then extrapolated over 10, we actually can alter that sort of pro forma tool that we used, determining on based on whether we get more money or whether we had a decrease in funding. So this plan actually is significantly more flexible to those types of changes than the previous plan.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to go around. I'll double check Councillor Snell before I come back to you, but I will come back to you. I'm not seeing anything else. So Councillor Snell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Bell. Under the slide where you mentioned under product, number 4 was to regulate the supply. Does that mean to tighten the efficiencies in the operation? You know, whether it's ensuring that annual checks are being done, that units are right sized to the participants or occupants living in them, you know, that we, you know, the children move out and it's just the parents living there, that they're in the right sized unit. And also too, that we're ensuring that we're staying on top of those bad actors and getting the bad actors out so that good qualified people are able to get into these much needed units is my first question, please.
Okay.
Through
Nina?
to you, Chair Bell. So for the first part, in terms of what we call overhouse status, that is a provincial priority legislated. So we, by legislation, have to constantly ensure that people who are overhoused are right-sized into the right housing supply. And there's legislative process on how to do that. There's a year grace period before they have to start accepting offers. The tricky part is if you live in a community that does not have a smaller size unit, what would happen is you're then required to go on the wait list and pull from the wait list and get prioritized based on that, like select from the wait list. But yes, so the short answer is yes, we absolutely do that because we have to by law. The long answer is as we have to keep creating diversified options of stock, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, in order to right size people into the right household size by legislation. And that's what this plan is doing. It's creating a whole slew of different ways to do that, including rent supplements to allow people to go to the right size unit and open up the unit for someone, a larger family in need. In terms of the criminality and kind of like addressing things of like that prohibit you from staying in community housing, there has been some legislative changes around, once you've been evicted based on cause, and it's something to do with like criminal charges, you may be precluded from reapplying. So things like that we enforce according to the law and according to the process. As you know, and we've worked on this together, Councillor said, and we'll continue to work on it. We talk about the landlord tenant board and its process and how to expedite some of this for those really high risk, dangerous situations. And because the need is so great, it is important for us not to take a slower approach. We do still apply eviction prevention to all of our units, meaning clients have an opportunity to work with us and work with our support services that we've embedded, especially in our housing supply side, in order to address their issues of concern and to be able to be supported to stay housed. But once that's exhausted, then we implement accordingly, because the landlord tenant board's first question to us when we seek evictions on behavioral or issues outside of like rental arrears is, has that person been engaged and given an opportunity for supports? So if we haven't done that, we'll be asked to mediate before we can move forward. So we try to preemptively do that.
Great. GM Fayez Baguette, thank you. Councillor Snell, you have another couple?
Thank you, Chair Bell. Yeah, just to follow up with that, and I completely agree. Not only to not be a slow play, not to have a slow play because of the demand, but also it contributes to the NIMBYism, right? And so if we've got problematic properties, then it definitely creates sometimes a community divide when we're trying to open up a new opportunity in another community. Just my final question around the secondary suites. If you're finding that there's a bit of a slowness in the uptick of taking on that program for individuals, it could be because of exactly that point, the dysfunctional LTB and just people being reluctant, even though it's a great incentive of $50,000 to create that secondary suite. There's still, I think, a fear of getting into the rental market because of its dysfunction. Has your team considered somehow creating a list of qualified people that obviously you would sign off to say, hey, this doesn't mean that they're A++++, but we know these are good quality tenants that are looking for good places, to be able to create a list that people could pool from as a incentive?
Yeah, this is sorry, through you, Chair, I apologize. It's an absolute approach that we've been exploring and kind of learning from others. There is, talk of a matchmaker like portal to connect people and cross even generational ages. So aging couple, aging in place can't handle a home, a secondary suite is created. The tenant then has responsibilities to oversee the home, but then also assist with the couple being able to age in place and not leave their home. So there's lots of interesting things out there that we're going to explore. And I think the 10-year plan does give us that flexibility because that service manager pillar to explore unique partnerships. So these are the type of things, like the creative things we do want to do. But yeah, I think that's something I've heard raised a lot as an idea, especially in the technical age we live in, all the apps and stuff. You can probably launch a portal pretty quickly, and you'll find a lot of people that would probably be willing to connect on housing plans. So yeah, that's something we're going to look into.
Great, thanks. Great questions. Anybody else? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else. I'm going to read there's no motion for this at this point. I guess we're just going to go with the motions in 7.1. Is that correct, Patrick?
Yeah, that's correct. There's no motion required for this or the terms of reference.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go right into matters for consideration, which is 7.1, AHA 2025-266, update on 10-year affordable housing and homelessness prevention strategy. The recommendation is that item AHA 2025-266, dated September 30th, 2025, regarding update on 10-year affordable housing and homelessness prevention strategy be received. Someone put that on the floor for me, please. Great. Councillor McClellan, seconded by... oh, there we go. We got Councillor Prost. All right. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, moving on to other matters for consideration is 8.1, community planning permit system template. Nathan, you can take it from here.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bell, and good afternoon, committee members. I'll be quick, but we did want to, considering the discussion about the housing continuum, the planning department has continued our efforts on furthering the recommendations that are captured within the Housing ASAP, as we call it. So as you'll remember, the Housing ASAP, the Attainable Housing Supply Action Plan, was endorsed by County Council in 2024. And then earlier this year, an implementation plan was endorsed by County Council in February. And one of the recommendations from the Housing ASAP was to help equip our local municipalities who are more on the leading edge of the development approvals side of things and working with the market and the housing deliverers and the developers and the builders. What are some of the ways that we can facilitate and set the table for smoother processes and streamlining? And one of those that came out of the Housing ASAP was the community planning permit system. And effectively, the CPPS, as we call it, is a discretionary land use planning tool which can replace the traditional Planning Act applications. And so it's still a tool from the Planning Act, but it replaces and combines zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, and site plan control into one approval process. And there's different tiers within that process, some which can be delegated down to staff for quick and expeditious approval, and others that perhaps are broader scope and dealing with more complex issues can still be brought to committees or council of each local municipality. However, an interesting piece of the CPPS is it's a whole new way of planning. And sometimes to do a CPPS, you have to have official plan policy and a CPPS bylaw that articulates how the system would work and where it's supposed to work and what those thresholds for approvals and delegations would be. And so the overall goal of the county's approach in the project would be to create a template as a means to streamline the development approvals and increase the supply of the housing opportunities through the creation of a standardized bylaw template that is clear and easily applied by each and any one of the 16 local area municipalities. So to be clear, we're providing a local OPA template and a local CPPS bylaw that municipalities can take off the shelf if they choose and use it, modify it, adapt it, and work it into their own planning processes as they see fit. But it's not mandated, but it's there as yet again another value-added tool offered by the County of Simcoe. So more recently, on September 23rd of this year, staff report CCW 2025-237, which is also attached to the agenda of today's Attainable Housing Action or Affordable Housing Action Committee, it was brought forward to council, and The county has retained a consultant called Planscape, and they're very experienced in doing CPPS. They have a considerable experience working with other municipalities who have already integrated the CPPS into their ways of planning, and we're happy to have them on board. And they are right now, they're doing background research and consultation in the preparation of the CPPS related OP policies and the bylaw template. So effectively, the project has 3 stages. Stage 1 is the project initiation and background. Stage 2 is the project consultation and draft documents. And we presented the project to our local planning group, and we had a workshop with the local planners a couple weeks ago. And it's intended that the project consultant and planning staff will present an update on this project in more detail to the AHAC on November 18th, 2025, should that end up becoming the AHAC meeting. Ultimately, the project is intended to conclude in the first quarter of 2026. And then we would, as the county, we would have some choices. Should we receive additional budget funding from county council to assist with implementation? And those implementation tools could be things like process flows and draft notices and communication templates, all those little pieces that are tools in the toolbox that can really help local municipalities implement the CPPS more quickly, and really providing as a one-stop shop with all the tools, the techniques, and the policies. So we're really hopeful that this will work with our local municipalities and resonate with some of them, and look forward to bringing back more of a formative update in November later this year.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Maybe we'll just open up the floor. Is there any questions for Nathan? I'm not seeing any. I'm not scrolling through. Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that, Nathan. I think that's you've had a challenge since you've come in with all the changes to the province. They've pushed down on us, so I commend you for sticking through this with us. It's great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go into reference only. So this is for reference only. So there is no motion for that. I don't see any other considerations, matters for consideration. Adjournment. I guess we're at adjournment. Is there anything else anybody wanted to bring up? All right, that was quick and easy. Thank you so much, staff. Brittany, General Manager of Fayez Baguette, you guys always do an amazing job. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to open this up. Somebody want to move to adjourn? Great. Councillor Snell, seconded by Councillor Gordon. All right, all in favor? That is passed. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.